Om Vishwandarpana Drishyamana Nagari Tulyanyajantargatam Pashyannatmani Mayaya Bahirvodbhutan Yatha Nidraya Yasakshat Kurute Prabodha Samaye Svatmanamevadvayam Tasmai Shri Guru Murtaye Namayam Shri Dakshinamurtaye Narayanam Padmabhum Vasishtham Shaktin च तत्पुत्रपराशरं च व्यासं शुकं गौडपदं महान्तं गोविन्दयोगीन्द्रमथास्य शिष्यं श्रीशङ्कराचार्यमथास्य पद्मपादं च हस्तामलकं च शिष्यं तन्तोटकं वार्तिककारमन्यान् अस्मद्गुरून् सन्ततमानतोऽस्मि श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पादं शङ्करं लोकशङ्करं शङ्करं शङ्कराचार्यं केशवं बादरायणं सूत्रभाष्यकृतौ वन्दे भगवन्तौ पुनः पुनः परब्रह्मनिष्ठं स्वतो धर्मनिष्ठम् अहिंसैकनिष्ठं स्वशिष्यैः सुजुष्टं यतीनां वरिष्ठं गुरूणां गरिष्ठं दयानन्दरूपं मदाचार्यमीडे नमः श्रीपरमार्थाय संसाराध्यासनाशिने श्रोत्रियब्रह्मनिष्ठाय तस्मै ब्रह्मविदे नमः सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम् ॐ तपोभिः क्षीणपापानां शान्तानां वीतरागिणां मुमुक्षूणामपेक्ष्योऽयम् आत्मबोधो विधीयते. I welcome you all to the 14th class of the Atma Bodha series. We will first read verses 27, 28 and 29 and review them before moving forward. Rajju sarpavadaatmanam
रज्जु सर्पवदात्मानं
जीवं ज्ञात्वा भयं वहेत्
जीवं ज्ञात्वा भयं वहेत्
नाहं जीवः परात्मेति
नाहं जीवः परात्मेति
ज्ञातं चेन्निर्भयो भवेत्
ज्ञातं चेत् निर्भयो भवेत्
आत्मावभासयत्येकः
आत्मा अवभासयत् एकः
बुद्ध्यादीनीन्द्रियाण्यपि
बुद्ध्यादीनिन्द्रियाण्यपि
दीपो घटादिवत् स्वात्मा
दीपो घटादिवत् स्वात्मा
जडैस्तैर्नावभास्यते
जडैस्तैर्न अवभास्यते
स्वबोधे नान्यबोधेच्छा
स्वबोधे नान्यबोधेच्छा
बोधरूपतयात्मनः
बोधरूपतयात्मनः
न दीपस्यान्यदीपेच्छा
न दीपस्यान्यदीपेच्छा
यथा स्वात्मप्रकाशने
यथा स्वात्मप्रकाशने.
In these verses, Bhagavad is teaching us Atma Anatma Vivekaha. Why is Atma Anatma Vivekaha required and what form it takes? In the beginning, before the emergence of the world, Brahman alone was there, imperishable, all-pervading consciousness. But Brahman, being changeless, cannot account for this plurality. And therefore, Vedanta teaches us that Maya is also there, but not really as an also, because Maya does not have an independent existence. Maya is mithya that depends upon Brahman for its existence. It cannot exist separately from Brahman. And this Maya is the entire world in an unmanifest form, exactly like the entire dream is in an unmanifest form in the mind of the waker. So the situation in the beginning is very similar to our deep sleep. If we were to experience this pralaya, this is what pralaya is like before the creation. It is exactly like our deep sleep. Brahman is there, and the entire world is in an unmanifest form. And exactly like this dream world emerges from the one who is asleep, similarly, this entire world emerges from Brahman assisted by Maya. So we saw Jaganti, Sarga, Sthiti, Layan, Yanti. Worlds emerge like bubbles in the ocean, and beings emerge like ornaments from gold. So no new substance is created. Really speaking, the material, the ultimate material cause, the vivarta upadana karanam, as we saw, the changeless material cause is Brahman and Brahman alone. Brahman undergoes absolutely no change even when the creation emerges. So what has undergone change? It is only Maya. The unmanifest Nama Rupas have become manifest. So no new substance has been created. Only Nama Rupas have become manifest. So in this manner, the Sukshma Panchabhutas emerge and the Sukshma Shariras or the various Jivas emerge. So these Sukshma and Sthula Upadhis of the Jivas come about. And now this all-pervading consciousness that is Brahman apparently gets enclosed within each of these Upadhis of the Jivas. Just like space gets enclosed, seemingly enclosed when pots are created. Then we talk about a multiplicity of spaces associated with different names and forms. Similarly, now we can talk about a multiplicity of consciousnesses associated with different names and forms. Now, one thing that happens is that when this Brahma Chaitanyam pervades the upadhi of the body and the mind, the sthula and sukshma sharira, then the sthula and sukshma sharira borrow consciousness and begin to act as though they have their own sentiency. So they become sentient by borrowing consciousness. And we call this borrowed consciousness reflected consciousness. And these sthula and sukshma shariras are called the reflecting media. Just like one sun gets reflected in multiple buckets of water, there is a reflection in each bucket. Similarly, in each of these upadhis, there is a reflected consciousness. Now, the avarana shakti of Maya comes in. So if the avarana shakti, the concealing power of Maya had not come in, and if the jiva was asked, who are you? Then jiva would say, I am Brahman. Just like if you were to ask the reflected sun in the bucket, who are you? that reflected sun, if there is no ignorance, should say, I am really the original that happens to be manifested as this reflection in this bucket. But then the Avarana Shakti of Maya comes in. Because the Avarana Shakti of Maya comes in, the Adhishthanam, the nature of the Adhishthanam is concealed, the nature of Brahman is concealed. And therefore, this Jiva no longer knows that I am Brahman. And this Jiva mistakes himself to be this reflected consciousness and says, I am only this much. Because the reflected consciousness is limited, it is limited to the upadhi. Therefore, the Jiva says, I am limited only to this upadhi. It is a reflected consciousness that is talking. It says, I am limited only to this upadhi. So, the Jiva becomes limited. The attributes of the upadhi and this consciousness, I all get mixed up. I start to say, I am limited, I am mortal, I am apurnaha. And then what happens? I become this jnata drashteti muhyati. One starts to take oneself as a limited knower, seer, smeller, thinker, taster. And then I see this world, separate world outside of me because I am limited only to this upadhi. I see this separate world, and therefore that I see as the source of my purnatva. I see that I am a purnaha. If I have to become purnaha, I have to pursue something or the other in the world. Whatever the jiva does, he never gets lasting purnatvam. He continues to see himself as limited, mortal. Therefore, he is born, he is growing, decaying, dying. And when the upadhi goes away, another upadhi is born, growing, decaying, dying. So he gets trapped in this endless series of births and deaths, seeking purnatvam. This is samsara. Jiva becomes a samsari. So once this jiva has struggled enough, and thinks that whatever he is doing in the world is not working, he approaches a guru. And he says that I am so limited, I am mortal. Is there any way out of this? I am suffering. Now the guru were to directly tell him, hey, you are actually Brahman. And he is not going to understand this. Why? Because initially he is turbulently ignorant. He is turbulently ignorant. And therefore his turbulence has to first come down. So the Guru says, practice karma yoga, practice upasana yoga. So this jiva goes and practices karma yoga. And then tapo bhihi, that's tapas. Tapo bhihi kshina papana. And he becomes free of these papas that bring about the lack of qualifications for understanding I am Brahman. Kshina papana. Vitaraginam, his ragas and dveshas become dilute. And he gains the qualification Vivekaha, Vairagyam, Samadhi Shatka Sampattihi, Mumukshutvam. Now, once he has gained these qualifications, he is no longer turbulently ignorant. He is quietly ignorant. And then he becomes an ideal candidate for the study of Vedanta. But even now, the Guru directly tells him, you are Brahman. He is still not going to get the message. Why? Because the ignorance is there and he's still mixed up. There's a mix up of Atma and Anatma. So, first he has to do this Atma Anatma Vivekaha. This is why Atma Anatma Vivekaha is required. But Atma and Anatma belong to different orders of reality. They can never really get mixed up. Like this person can never get married to the girl in his dreams. They belong to different orders of reality. There can be no relationship at all. So how is this Atma and Anatma? How has it gotten mixed up? It is only in his mind. Nowhere else. Physically, there is no separation required. He has to just sort out the misunderstanding in his mind. Therefore, yukti avaghatataha. His mind has to be pounded to separate, like we saw, the husk from the grain. But in this case, the pounding is not physical. It has to be done with yukti avaghatataha. With reason. But is this standalone reason? No, it is reason which originates from the Shabdas of Vedanta, that supports the Shabdas of Vedanta. Or he has to go through this Atma Anatma Viveka that we have been seeing in all of these verses. Now Bhagavad here says, Rajju Sarpavad Atmanam Jivam Gyatva Bhayam Vahet. So Bhagavad is saying that if you take yourself to be the Jivaha, that is this limited reflected consciousness, then you will invariably have fear. So he gives the example of the snake and the rope. When I don't understand that it is really a harmless rope, I mistake it for a snake. And then there is fear, palpitation, screaming, beating, running away. All of these are there. So what do I have to do? I have to understand what truly is, what really is. For that, I have to shine a torch and see that what is here is only a rope. The moment I understand that it's only a rope, all of the fear vanishes. So similarly, we saw the other example of the waker. When the waker ignores, does not know that I am really the waker, he is ignorant of the fact that I am really the waker, he becomes identified with the dream individual, the limited dream individual in the dream. And then there is fear, he goes through a nightmare in the dream. Or we took the example of the actor who is wearing the costume of the beggar and enters the drama. And then, if he forgets that he is really the actor, then he identifies himself with the beggar. And then he has to face a lot of insecurity and he does not know where his next meal is going to come from. The solution is to wake up. Wake up to one's real nature. The dream individual, one has to wake up from the dream instead of identifying with the dream individual. When one understands that one is the waker, the fear of the dream, the nightmare goes away. Similarly, once the actor understands that I am really the actor, I had just misunderstood myself to be the beggar, then all of his insecurity goes away. So similarly, I have left the most secure thing, which is the Atma. It is imperishable and it is non-dual. There is no second thing apart from it at all. I have left that and I have come down to the level of the Jiva. Wearing this costume of the body mind, I have forgotten that I am really the Atma. And then I see myself in this separate world. I have come down from non-duality into duality. And the moment duality comes in, there is space and time. And therefore, I have become limited in space. I extend only this much. I have become limited in time. I am a mortal with a date of birth and a future date of death. Therefore, fear is inevitable. Therefore, one has to wake up saying, Naham Jivaha, I am not this Jivaha, Paratmeti, I am the Parat. Jnatam chet Nirbhayo bhavet. If one wakes up to one's real nature as being a non-dual Atma, then one understands that there is no second thing apart from me at all. For me to be afraid of, for me to be afraid of something, there has to be a second thing. When there is no second thing other than me, what is there for me to be afraid of? So nirbhayo bhavet, one becomes fearless. So now the question arises, Jnatam Chet. He says, if the Paratma is known, if I know that I am the Paratma, now the question is, how do I know this limitless Atma? So before we come to the limitless part of it, how do I know the Atma? So Bhagavad Pada says in verse 28 that Atma is ever the illuminator, it is never the illuminator. Atma avabhasayati ekaha. Buddhyadin, buddhyadini indriyani api. That Atma illuminates this body, mind, sense complex. And it is never illuminated by the body, mind, sense complex. Just like in a dark room, a lamp illuminates the pot, but the pot never illuminates the lamp. So then the question is, for everything, I know things as an object. That is what we figuratively call illumination, knowing something as an object. So that is how I am oriented. I know everything as an object. So the question is, how do I know the Atma? If I cannot illumine the Atma with my body, mind, sense complex, how do I know the Atma as an object? So in verse 29, Bhagavad Pada is pointing out that Atma need not be known as an object. Atma cannot be known as an object, all right, but Atma need not be known as an object. So then, how does this work? So for this, we saw how we know any object in this world. We said in order to know any object in this world, association with consciousness is required. So when thoughts arise in my mind, whether it be a thought of anger or a thought of happiness or a thought of jealousy or a thought of compassion, whatever thought arises in my mind, I immediately know that thought. Why? Because the thought, being made of subtle matter, is automatically imbued with the reflection of consciousness. It is automatically associated with consciousness. So this thought, when it arises in my mind, I don't need any special effort to know it. It is known. But then if there's a pot outside, that pot outside is jada. It doesn't have its own consciousness, nor can it make itself known. And therefore, it has to be associated with consciousness. How does this association with consciousness happen? This thought in the mind has to go out through my sense organs and then pervade the pot. This is what we call vritti vyapti. He has to take place. Thought has to pervade the pot. And then Vishaya avarana nivritti happens, meaning the ignorance of the pot is removed. And this thought is shining with the reflection of consciousness. Therefore, when the thought pervades the pot, the reflection of consciousness also pervades the pot, and therefore the pot is illumined in the presence of reflected consciousness. This is what we call ghatakara vrittihi, has got the Pratibimbita Chaitanyam, Ghatakara Vritti Pratibimbita Chaitanyam, and therefore this is Ghatakara Chaitanyam or pot consciousness. This is what we call pot knowledge. So this is how the knowledge of the pot takes place. There are two steps involved. One is Vritti Vyaptihi, the thought pervades the pot, and the other is Phala Vyaptihi, where the reflection of consciousness carried by the thought pervades the pot also. So now, how about the Atma? The nature of the Atma is also concealed by ignorance. Now, how is that ignorance removed and how is the Atma illuminated? So, are there these two stages involved in the knowledge of the Atma? The first thing we say that this Atma Kara Vritti is required in order to know the Atma, in order to remove the ignorance. Why? Because just like the rope is not opposed to the rope ignorance or the snake. Because when the rope ignorance is there, I see the snake, the rope is also there. If the rope was the destroyer of the ignorance and the snake, then I should never have seen the snake. Because the rope can never coexist with rope ignorance and the snake. But the rope happily coexists with the rope ignorance and the vision of the snake. Superimposition of the snake. In fact, it supports the superimposition of the snake. So the rope cannot destroy the superimposition of the snake or the rope ignorance. So similarly, we say that Atma cannot destroy Atma Ajnanam or the superimposition of Apurnatvam. In fact, Atma supports the superimposition of Apurnatvam, because when I say I am Apurnaha, when I say I am referring to the Atma that is supporting the superimposition of Apurnatvam. So then what is opposed to ignorance? It is this vritti jnanam. So the vritti jnanam, this is a rope has to take place. That vritti jnanam alone destroys the rope ignorance. With my conviction that this is a rope, that's the vritti jnanam. That destroys the rajju ajnanam, the rope ignorance, and the superimposition of the snake. Similarly, I have to have a vritti jnanam. Atmakara vrittihi, brahmakara vrittihi. That is in the same order of reality as the ignorance. For two things to be destroyer and destroyed, the destroyer and the destroyed have to be in the same order of reality as the thing being destroyed. Atma is in a higher order of reality, therefore it coexists with the Atma Ajnanam. But when the Atma Kara Vritti comes, that is in the same order of reality as the ignorance that destroys the ignorance. So this vritti has to arise in my mind that Aham Brahmasmi, I am Brahman. That is the Atma Kara vritti. And that destroys the Atma Ajnanam. So does this Atma Kara vritti also do these two things that the Ghata Kara vritti did? We say that the Atma Kara vritti has vritti vyapti. It takes the form of the Atma. And therefore it removes the Atma Ajnanam. So vritti vyapti is there, it does the job of removal of the ignorance. But we say that the phala vyapti, even this vritti, atma kara vritti carries the reflection of consciousness, but we say the phala vyapti has no role to play here. Why? Because atma is self-evident, it is self-luminous. Just like when the sun is there, if I have a mirror, then the mirror is illuminated by the light of the sun, but the light of the mirror, the reflected light of the mirror is not required to illumine the sun. Similarly, this Atmakara Vritti is illuminated with the light of Atma, with the consciousness borrowed from Atma, but that consciousness is not required to illuminate the Atma that is of the nature of consciousness. Therefore, we say that Atmakara Vritti arises, but it only has one role to play, that is removal of the ignorance. The Atma is self-evident. Even during the state of ignorance, Atma was self-evident. But that self-evident Atma was known wrongly as I am limited, I am mortal. But with the rise of the Atmakara Vritti, that the Atma is really Brahman. That the self-evident Atma is really Brahman. Then all of these superimpositions that were done because of ignorance are removed. Just the self-evident Atma being self-evident, just this removal of ignorance is enough. The illumination of the Atma is not required. So we say that we study Vedanta not in order to gain an experience of the Atma, because the self-evident Atma is there in every experience. But in every experience, due to ignorance, that Atma has been mixed up with Anatma, the Sthula Sharira, Sukshma Sharira, Karana Sharira, Chidabhasa, the reflected consciousness, all of these have gotten mixed up. So when I experience the Atma, I am experiencing it in a mixed up state. Exactly like I see this red flower placed next to the crystal, I see the crystal as being red. So without inquiry, I will take the crystal to be red. I will say it's a red crystal. But when I inquire into it, I understand that the redness belongs to the flower. Whereas the nature of the crystal is colorlessness. The flower has got certain features, the crystal has got certain features. The redness belongs to the flower, the crystal is colorless. But when I say the redness belongs to the crystal, without inquiry, I have really made a mistake. When I study this phenomenon, I understand what belongs to what. So similarly, we are studying Vedanta. Why? In order to place the attributes in the right places. So there are limitations, like we said, space limitation, time-wise limitation. I say I am limited, I extend only to this body, I am mortal, I was born on such and such a date, I will die on such and such a date. So the Atma has got mixed up with the limitations of the Shariratraya. So I have to hand over the limitations of the Shariratrayam to the Shariratrayam and see that the Atma is free of these limitations. We are not talking about new experience of the Atma, but only a change in my understanding. Like I can continue to see the crystal as being a red crystal, but now my understanding is totally different, that the crystal is colorless. So even though I appear to be limited, I understand that this limitation is an appearance only. Limitations really belong to the three shariras. So this is the Atma Anatma Viveka. So with verse 29, the Atma Anatma Viveka portion has ended. So now we said that one has to know that I am the limitless Atma. And Bhagavad points out that Atma is self-evident, so it need not be known as an object. So the Atma Kara Vritti has to take place. In order to remove my ignorance, that is enough. So now the question is, how does this Atma Kara Vritti take place? How do I come to this Atma Kara Vritti, Aham Brahmasmi Vritti? For this, the Mahavakya Vichara is required. Therefore, in the next verse, Bhagavad Pada is entering the Mahavakya Vichara. We will read verse 30. निषिध्य निखिलोपाधीन
निषिध्य निखिलोपाधीन्
नेति नेतीति वाक्यतः
नेति नेतीति वाक्यतः
विद्यादैक्यं महावाक्यैः
विद्याद्यैक्यं महावाक्यैः
जीवात्म परमात्मनोः
जीवात्म परमात्मनोः
निषिध्य निखिल उपाधीन निखिलोपाधीन नेति नेति न इति इति वाक्यतः विद्यात् ऐक्यं महावाक्यैः जीवात्म परमात्मनोः. So Bhagavad is saying Vidyat. Vidyat means may you know. May you know what? Aikyam. May you know the identity. Vidyat Aikyam. May you know the identity. So whenever we talk about identity, we have to ask identity of what and what. Bhagavad says, Jivatma Paramatmanoho. The identity of Jivatma and Paramatma. How do I know the identity of Jivatma and Paramatma? Mahavakya, through the Mahavakyas. So Bhagavad is telling us about the Mahavakya here, which is the central teaching of all the Upanishads. All other teachings of Vedanta are meant to come to the central teaching of the Mahavakya. What is the Mahavakya? The definition for the Mahavakya that says Jivatma Paramatmaikya Bodhaka Vakyam Mahavakyam. Jivatma Paramatmaikya Bodhaka Vakyam Mahavakyam. Meaning that sentence in Vedanta that reveals the identity of Jivatma and Paramatma is called the Mahavakya. The identity of the creature and the creator. So, these are the introductory words of Vedanta that we have talked about. Vedanta introduces me to who I am. This happens through the Mahavakya. I come to know that this self-evident Atma is indeed Brahman. And we say that these are the introductory words of Vedanta. This knowledge that is gained through the Mahavakya cannot be gained through any other means of knowledge. We have looked at all the pramanas and we said that there are these sixfold pramanas. Pratyaksha, Anumana, Arthapatti, Upamana, Anupalabdhi, Laukika Shabdas. None of these can inform me who I really am. We have to come to the Apaurusheya Shabda Pramana of Vedanta. That alone tells me who I am. So the Mahavakya takes the form, if we take a sample Mahavakya, takes the form Tat Tvam Asi. There's the Tat Pada, which refers to Paramatma. And the Tvam Pada refers to the Jivatma. It's telling me the identity of the Jivatma and Paramatma. The individual who takes himself to be a limited being is being equated to the Paramatma, who is the Srishti, Sthiti, Laya Karana of this entire Jagat. The identity of the two is revealed. But what happens when a student hears the Mahavakya? We are talking about this person who is no longer turbulently ignorant, but who has also done this Atma Anatma Viveka, let us say. Or he is in the process of doing the Atma Anatma Viveka. He has gained some qualifications and he is listening to this teaching. So the intellect resists this teaching. We have to look into why the intellect resists this. Because when I hear that I am one with Ishvara, you are Ishvara, then I find it very difficult to swallow this because I see myself as a limited individual. Alpagyaha, I see myself as one with little knowledge. I know a few things in this world, but if you ask me something about some other area or go a little deeper into the same area that I think I know, eventually I have to say I don't know. I am Alpagya. I am Alpa Shaktiman. I have limited powers, limited skills. And I am a Karta Bhokta. I do something in order to gain Purnatvam, try to gain Purnatvam in this world. I do various things and I am a Bhokta. I am under control of the law of karma. So the vision of the student is that I am only this much. I am only this much. I am 5 feet 2 inches tall. I was born on such and such a date. And there is some date of expiry. So I am a mortal, limited, apurna individual. So this is my vision of myself, the struggling samsari. On the other hand, I see Paramatma. Paramatma is Sarvagya. Like we said, Ghatasya Karta Ghatagyaha, maker of a pot, is knowledgeable about pots. Patasya Karta Patagyaha, maker of a cloth, knows how to weave the cloth. But Paramatma is Sarvasya Karta, he is the maker of everything, so he has knowledge of everything. He is Sarvagya. And he is Sarva Shaktiman. He did not need any help from anybody to bring about this creation. He did it single-handed. So from whatever angle I see, I cannot see any oneness. I am Alpagyaha, Paramatma is Sarvagyaha. I am Alpashaktiman, Paramatma is Sarvashaktiman. I am Karta Bhokta, Paramatma is Karma Phaladata. He is the wielder of the law of karma, the giver of results of karma of various beings. So the intellect resists this message. How can there be a oneness? This is where we point out that the Mahavakya is like an equation. An equation is not required when the two sides are evidently the same. Like 3 equals 3 is a useless equation. It doesn't tell me anything new. And an equation is impossible when the two sides are obviously different. The two sides are fundamentally different. Like 3 equals 10. It's an impossible equation. But an equation is required when the two sides are seemingly different, but there is a oneness in reality. Like 3 plus 2 equals 10 minus 5. The two sides are seemingly very different. There are smaller numbers on one side, 3 and 2. There are bigger numbers on the other side. There's a plus sign on this side. There's a minus sign on the other side. The two sides are very different. In fact, the challenge for somebody who is maybe going to LKG or UKG for such a child to understand this is a bit of a challenge. So we say that a teacher is required to explain this. The teacher explains this to the child, saying, you see, 3 plus 2 is 10 minus 5. 3 plus 2 is 5. 10 minus 5 is 5. Both are really 1. Do you understand? The teacher asks. Now, let's say that somebody is explaining such an equation to the other person. It may be the simple equation, or it may be something more like E is equal to mc squared. It's a much more complicated equation to understand. The teacher does a lot of explanation and asks, do you understand? Let's say the person says, I trust you. I trust you. So the teacher is going to say, this is not a matter of trust. I am not asking you to believe me. This is a matter of understanding. This has to be understood. So the child is not understanding. The teacher's job is to make the child understand. He says, you see, there is 3. Let's keep 3 on this finger. And now you add 2, so 4 and 5. Now you see, on the other side we have 10. Let's keep 10. And then let's remove 5. So when we remove 5, what are we left with? We are left with 5. So now do you understand? Then the child says, yes, now I understand what you're talking about. So the differences have to be explained away so that the underlying oneness becomes evident. And the differences are reduced to superficial, incidental, seeming differences. Then one sees the meaning of the equation. So similarly, we come to this equation of Jivatma and Paramatma. So the Jivatma and Paramatma were evidently different. There's no equation Right? No equation is possible. On the other hand, if the Jivatma and Paramatma are evidently the same, also no equation is necessary. The issue is that the Jivatma and Paramatma appear to be different, but really speaking, there is a oneness. That is why this equation is required. This Aikya Bodhaka Vakyam, Mahavakyam is required. So the differences have to be explained away so that the underlying oneness becomes evident. The differences have to be reduced to seeming incidental differences, superficial differences. So now one thing we have to understand before we enter into this discussion is that when we talk about words, what meaning of a word comes to my mind? So for example, when I go to a pot shop and I say that I want to buy this pot, then the meaning that I intend there, so the pot has got two components. It has got the Nama Rupa as well as the clay. Meaning has got two components. Nama Rupa, pot Nama Rupa, and the clay. So when I say I want to buy the pot, then the seller understands that I intend the whole pot. I'm not just talking about the Nama Rupa or just the clay. He gives me the pot Nama Rupa along with the clay. So this is called the Vachyartha, or the primary meaning of the word. Primary meaning or Vachyartha of a word includes the total meaning of all the components. On the other hand, in a lot of our Vyavahara, we don't use Vachyartha. In fact, a lot of the times we don't use Vachyartha. We have a certain intended meaning of the word that is not the Vachyartha. For example, I say, I ate a banana. Somebody asks me, do you want to eat something? I say, I just ate a banana. So when I say I ate the banana, then I'm not talking about the Vachyartha of the banana, which includes the peel. I have peeled away the peel in my understanding, and I have eaten only the fruit. So this is what I mean. And the listener also understands. He doesn't ask me, oh, you ate the peel also. How did you do that? Why did you do that? He doesn't say all this. There's no confusion in his mind. He understands when I say I ate the banana that I have discarded the peel. He understands that. So this is called the lakshyartha, the intended meaning of a word, which makes the sentence meaningful. So there is another example that we have seen, that we go to a high school reunion, let us say. Let us say that I go to my high school reunion. We are meeting after 40 years, 40, 50 years. So there are, as it happens after high school, right, high school or college, only there are a set of people that you are more in touch with compared to other people that you have lost touch with. But in the reunion, everybody shows up. People whom you have not seen for the last 40, 50 years. So now I am talking to somebody whom I have been in touch with. Right? And suddenly this third person comes there and says, I am Devadatta. Now this person happens to be in touch with him, or somewhat in touch with him. So he immediately understands, oh, Devadatta, very nice to meet you, and all that, after such a long time. So he recognizes this Devadatta. But I have some difficulty placing who this Devadatta is. He's standing in front of me with spectacles and a mustache and a French beard, right? With a big paunch. So I can't place this person at all, a balding head. So I'm struggling to place him. Who is this person? So this person next to me, he sees that I am not able to place him. So he immediately pulls out. So he is one of those people, right? So in every every kind of a class. There are these people who are hyper socially active people who keep in touch with everybody. So this person is one of those people. So immediately pulls out this photograph from the school days, right, where everybody is sitting in shorts and with the teacher and the assistant teacher. We all have these photographs. He says, "What? You're not able to place this Devadatta?" And he shows me the photograph. You see this fellow here? This Devadatta is that Devadatta. So when I see that fellow, now I recognize, oh, this was the guy who pushed me that day and I, hit my head against a pillar. So he is that same fellow. So now I place this Devadatta. Right? So if you look at that Devadatta, he is the short fellow, right? Wearing shorts and a thin fellow. Absolutely no connection with this Devadatta, with this big paunch and beard and balding head spectacles. If you take the Vachyartha of the two Devadattas, then there is no identity possible at all. But when he says this Devadatta is that Devadatta, I immediately understand now who he is talking about, what he is talking about. I understand that there is one person behind this Devadatta and that Devadatta. I know who that person is. That person who is behind this Devadatta and that Devadatta is free of this qualification as well as that qualification. All the qualifications that this Devadatta has and all the qualifications that that Devadatta has, I have dropped them, then I see the identity of the two. So I've gone through the process of filtering the Vachyartha, setting aside the meanings that don't make sense in the sentence. I have set them aside. And then I retain the part that makes sense. And then I see the identity. I understand the meaning of the sentence. So we say here too, if we take the Vachyartha, we will have a problem. So let us look at the components of the Jivatma and Paramatma. So we say, if we look at the Jivatma has got 5 components in the Vachyartha. What are the 5 components of the Jivatma? There is the Sharira Trayam, the Sthula Sharira, the Sukshma Sharira, and the Karana Sharira. And then there's the Chidabhasa. And then there is the original consciousness, Brahma Chaitanyam, which we call Atma in the context of the Jiva. So there is the Sharira Trayam, Sthula, Sukshma, Karana Sharira. And then the Chidabhasa, the reflected consciousness, and the Atma. So we can say there are 3 reflecting media, the Sthula, Sukshma, Karana, Sharira, the reflecting media. There are 3 reflecting media, 1 reflected consciousness and 1 original consciousness. These are the 5 components of the Jivatma. And the Jivatma is a limited pramata, limited knower, karta, bhokta, limited in every sense of the word. But now, if we look at the Paramatma consists of 5 components also. There is the Prapanchatrayam, meaning that there is a Karana Prapancha, which we call Maya. And from the Karana Prapancha, the Sukshma Prapancha has emerged. All these Sukshma Bhutas and the Sukshma Shariras of the various Jivas, all put together are the Sukshma Prapancha. And then there's the Sthula Prapancha, which is the Sthula Shariras of all the Jivas, and all these inanimate Sthula objects, which comprise of all these 14 lokas. So that is the Sthula Prapancha. And in this, there is the Brahma Pratibimbam, or the reflected consciousness. So there are 3 reflecting media, 1 reflecting consciousness, 1 reflected consciousness. And then there's the Brahma Chaitanyam, or the original consciousness. These are the 5 components of Paramatma. And Paramatma does not have the sense of limited individuality. Paramatma becomes this Sarvagyaha, Sarvashaktiman, Karma Phaladata. So if we take all this Vachyartha, Jivatma and Paramatma, then there is no identity possible. Like this Devadatta and that Devadatta. They are vastly different. They are poles apart. But what Mahavakya is telling me is that there is an identity between the two that you have to understand. So when I'm taking the Vachyartha, I protest, saying that I don't understand what you're talking about. The protest is because the appropriate Lakshyartha has not been taken. So in this case, we have to apply the same kind of filtering technique that I did with this Devadatta and that Devadatta to come to the Lakshyartha. Like we take, if we take the sentence, somebody says, I am fat. Somebody tells me, I am fat. Then, if I take the entire Vachyartha, right, then that includes the body, the mind, and the sense organs, and all that. So the sentence, I am fat, will not make sense. I have to discard everything and know that he is referring to the body only. Or if I say that I am emotional, right, then I am referring to my mind only, not to this body. And the other person also understands this. Just as we saw in the case of Soyam Devadatta, also this process of filtering I go through, the listener also goes through this. So here I have to come to the Lakshyartha by removing the unwanted parts or the meanings. How do I come to the Lakshyartha? That is the question. So we say that the situation is very similar to this other situation where I am standing in front of two mirrors. Let us say that one is a convex mirror, the other is a concave mirror. And I am standing in front of those two. Then in the convex mirror, I see a small reflection of my face. In the concave mirror, I see a big reflection of my face. But the original face has got neither the smallness nor the bigness. So both of these reflections are distorted. So the original doesn't look like either of those two. So now let us say that somebody comes and tells me that the small face is really the big face. Small face is the big face. So here again, we look at the Vachyartha of what the small face is, the word small face. What is the meaning of it? It refers to the small face in the mirror, in the convex mirror. And but the small face cannot exist in isolation without the mirror. So when I am taking the small face, I have to take the mirror also. And the small face cannot exist without the original face. So when he says the small face in the Vachyartha and the total meaning of the word, I have to take the original face also. So now the Vachyartha of this word small face is the small face in the mirror, the reflection in the mirror, plus the mirror, plus the original face. This is the Vachyartha of the word small face. Now if I take the big face, the Vachyartha of the big face is the reflection in the concave mirror. But that cannot exist without the concave mirror. So when I take the reflection, I bring in the concave mirror also. And that big face cannot exist without the original face. So in the Vachyartha of the word big face, I have the reflection in the concave mirror, the concave mirror, as well as the original face. All three are there. So now if somebody is telling me the small face is the big face, and if I am taking the Vachyartha, then there can be no equality. What do I have to do if I trust these words of this person? And how do I understand the word? See, I may trust the words, but the words have to be followed by an understanding. How do I understand the words? So that's why Bhagavad Pada says, Nishidhya Nikhilopadhi. I have to set aside all the upadhis. To set aside the upadhis. So with the Vachyartha, I cannot, the sentence does not make sense. If I have to make sense of the sentence, I have to set aside the upadhis. So let us say I set aside the convex mirror. Along with it, the reflection goes. If I set aside the concave mirror, along with it, the big reflection goes. The small reflection goes, big reflection goes, along with the mirrors. And what is left? What is left is this one original face that has neither this smallness nor this bigness. So this one original face alone was manifesting as two different faces because of the difference in the media, in the difference in the upadhis. The upadhis were causing this difference. The difference was not in the original. The difference and the distance between the this phase and the that phase, between the this small phase and the that big phase, both were created. The difference and the distance are because of the upadhis. In the original phase, there is no distance and no difference. Why? Because it is one. This is how I understand the meaning of the sentence by coming to the lakshya. So similarly here, so here the Lakshyartha is really the original phase. In the Lakshyartha, there is no difference because the original is one. So similarly, we have to understand the Mahavakya also. Tat Tvam Asi, there is a Tat Pada and the Tvam Pada. The Tat Pada refers to the Paramatma, the Tvam Pada refers to the Jivatma. If we take the Vachyartha of the Tvam Pada, then we have to include the Sharira Trayam, the Sthula Sukshma Karana Shariram, and the reflected consciousness. In fact, the Tvampada, as we have seen, refers to the Jivatma, that refers to the reflected consciousness, the borrowed consciousness in this body mind. So the Tvampada refers to this Jivatma, this reflection in the body mind, the reflected consciousness in the body mind. If I have to take the reflected consciousness, then I have to bring in the Sharira Trayam also. Because that is the reflecting media. The reflected consciousness cannot exist without the reflecting media. But the reflected consciousness cannot exist without the original, so I have to bring in the Atma also. So now the Vachyartha of the Tvampada refers to the reflected consciousness in the Sharira Trayam, along with the original consciousness, the Atma. Now, if I take the Paramatma, then that is the reflected consciousness, the Brahma Pratibimbam in the Prapanchatrayam. So if I take the Brahma Pratibimbam, I have to bring in the Prapanchatrayam, Karana, Sukshma, and Sthula Prapancha. And the reflected consciousness cannot exist without this original all-pervading consciousness that is Brahman. So I bring in Brahman also. So now there are 5 components in the meaning of the Tatpada and the Vachyartha of the Tatpada. So if I take the Vachyartha of the Tvampada and the Vachyartha of the Tatpada, no identity is possible. But then this is the Shabda Pramana of Vedanta. Then I have Shraddha in what Vedanta is saying. Therefore, I am trying to understand, I'm trying to make sense of the. We say that we have to come to the Lakshyartha. How do I come to the Lakshyartha? Nishidhya Nikhilopadhi. I set aside the upadhi. And how do I set aside the upadhis? Neti neti iti vakyataha. Taking the help of the Upanishadic statements like neti neti, na iti, not this, not this. So the neti neti is repeated because I am doing this removal of the upadhis for the Jivatma, the Vachyartha of the Jivatma, of the Vachyartha of the Tvam as well as the Vachyartha of the Tatpada. Neti neti. I'm removing the upadhis, the unwanted upadhis. So I negate the four mithya upadhis from Jivatma. I negate the four mithya upadhis from Paramatma. What happens when I remove the upadhis? So I set aside the Shariratrayam. I set aside the Shariratrayam in my understanding of the Tvampada. And what happens? The reflected consciousness also goes along with it. What is left? What is left is the Lakshyartha of the Tvampada, that is this original consciousness, that is Atma. Atma alone is left. Similarly, in the Tatpada, Nishidhyas Nikhilopadhin, I set aside the upadhis. I set aside the prapanchatrayam. Along with it, reflected consciousness also goes in the meaning I understand for the Tvampada. Then what is left? The Lakshyartha of the Tatpada. What is left in the Lakshyartha of the Tatpada? Is this Brahma Chaitanyam alone. So now this Atma is left here, Brahma Chaitanyam is left here. Vedanta is telling me that in these two there is no difference. Why? Because all the differences, all the distance and the difference and the distance, all caused because of the upadhi only. In this original consciousness, there is no alpagyatvam and no sarvagyatvam. In this original consciousness, there is no alpashaktimatvam, there is no sarvashaktimatvam. The original consciousness, there is no kartritvam, no bhoktritvam, no karma phala datritvam also. All of these are attributes of the upadhis, and not the attributes of the original. And therefore, in the original, there is no difference at all. In fact, there is one original consciousness that was manifesting as two because of the difference in the reflecting media. The distance and the difference was caused because of the upadhis. When I remove the upadhis, there is no distance between the two. There is in fact one. There is no difference between the two. And this is the lakshyartha of the Tvampada. This is the intended meaning of the Tvampada. So when I hear the Mahavakya, when I hear the Mahavakya being explained in this manner, then the same process is happening in my mind. As a student, the same process happens in my mind. And I come to the lakshyartha, I say that I, lakshyartha of the word I. When my guru is saying tvam, I am understanding it as I, lakshyartha of I. Is really this original consciousness. And this original consciousness is none other than Brahman. There is only one original consciousness, and that is Brahman, and that I am. So I come to Aham Brahmasmi Vritti using this Mahavakya Vichara. So here there can be a question that is raised. And that question is highlighted in the next verse. And the solution, the resolution for that is also given in the next verse. We will read that. Avidyakam shariradi
आविद्यकं शरीरादि
दृश्यं बुद्बुदवत्क्षरम्
दृश्यं बुद्बुदवक्क्षरम्
एतद्विलक्षणं विद्यात्
एतद्विलक्षणं विद्यात्
अहं ब्रह्मेति निर्मलम्.
अहं ब्रह्मेति निर्मलम्.
In the prior verse, we said that the Jivatma, and Paramatma. We looked at the components of Jivatma and Paramatma. And we said there are 5 components in all: the Sharira Trayam and the reflected consciousness and the original consciousness. And on the other side, we have the Prapancha Trayam and the reflected consciousness and the original consciousness. So now if we look at this, the differences are from the point of view of these 4 components. The Sthula Shariram and the Sthula Prapancha are very different. Sukshma Shariram and the Sukshma Prapancha are very different. Karana Shariram and the Karana Prapancha are very different. And then there is the reflected consciousness, which is spanning just the Sharira Trayam. On the other hand, the reflected consciousness is spanning the Prapancha Trayam. So the differences are from the point of view of these 4 components. The non-difference is only from the point of view of one component. So then one can ask a question that isn't 4 bigger than 1? So aren't the differences more than the non-difference? So if we were to hold an election here, right, so are these different or non-different? Then most people will say that they are actually different. Because if we say majority wins, then the majority is clearly winning here. All the exit polls will indicate that the majority is winning. So then, how are you talking about the non-difference? Why are you emphasizing the non-difference? This is a very critical word, actually. Very critical, very important question. And the resolution of this question is also very important. Why are you highlighting the non-difference when the non-difference is only from the point of view of one component? Whereas differences are from the point of view of 4 components. We say we are highlighting the non-difference. All the differences are in a lower order of reality. All the differences belong to the mithya upadhis, and therefore all the differences are mithya. And the non-difference is the satyam. Just like I show one small ornament here and I show one big ornament here. Now the smallness of this ornament and the bigness of that ornament both belong to the ornament, the nama rupa, but the differences are in mithya. In the original gold, there is no difference at all. Therefore here Bhagavad Pada says, avidyakam shariradi. That all of these shariradi, meaning all of these upadhis, right? Shariratrayam and prapanchatrayam, and the reflected consciousnesses, they are all avidyakam, meaning they are products of avidya, which can be called avidya also. They are either avidya or products of avidya, or products of maya. All products of Maya or Maya itself, as we will see. If you take the Shariratraya, if you take the Stula Sharir on one hand and the Stula Prapancha on the other hand, it is Avidyakam, products of Maya. Therefore, they are Mithya. If we take the Sukshma Shariram on one hand and the Sukshma Prapancha on the other hand, avidyakam, products of Maya, therefore they are mithya. And if we take Karana Shariram and Karana Prapancha, then we don't say they are products of Maya, we say they are Maya itself. And then what about the reflected consciousness? We say the reflected consciousness is again dependent on what? On these reflecting media. Since it is dependent, it is also mithya. It doesn't have its own existence. So the reflected consciousnesses in the Jivatma and Paramatma are also mithya, avidyakam. Mayikam. Avidyakam can be translated as Mayikam, meaning products of Maya. Therefore, all of these are either Maya or the products of Maya. Therefore, they cannot be taken seriously. Why? Because they are mithya. They are in a lower order of reality. Just as we said, the differences in these two ornaments are in a lower order of reality. From the point of view of gold, there is no difference at all. Or in my dream, I see a lot of differences in my dream, but they are all in a lower order of reality. All those differences dissolve when I look at it from the standpoint of the waker. Differences are not there at all. So avidyakam shariradi, they are all mithya. They are all products of Maya or Maya itself. And they are budbudavat ksharam, meaning that they are like bubbles. They only have this temporary dependent existence, don't have their independent existence, and even the dependent existence they are all temporary. Ksharam, meaning they're momentary, they are fleeting. And drishyam, meaning that Bhagavad is reminding us, Drigdrishyav dvau padarthau staha paraspara vilakshanau. Drig Brahma Drishyam Mayeti. Drishyam Mayeti. That Drishyam is all, Drishyam is Maya. So all of these are Maya. And Vilakshanau. Drishyau do padartho staha paraspara vilakshanau. The same word vilakshan. Aham etad vilakshanam. I am the Drik. That is different from all of these in the sense that I am Satyam, they are all Mithya. Drishyam is Maya, and I am Drik, that is Brahma. I don't come and go. All of these are Budbudavat Sharam, they come and go, whereas I never come and go. And Aham Brahmeti Vidyat. So before the Mahavakya, there are two notions that the student has. That Brahman is parokshaha. Brahman is something distant from me, remote from me. And I am parichinnaha, meaning I am limited. So both of these misconceptions go away upon the understanding of the Mahavakya by coming to the Lakshyartha. So Brahman is no longer remote. That's why aham brahmeti vidyat. This aparoksha atma, this atma that is self-evident right here and now itself is Brahman. Therefore, parokshatvam of Brahman goes away. That's why I am able to say, I am Brahman. That Brahman, I myself am. So the Ishvara that I thought was remote, that Ishvara is not really remote. That Brahman, that same Brahman that was there in the beginning of creation that we have been talking about, that Brahman is here and now. I myself am that Brahman. So I myself, as Brahman, with my Maya Shakti, I have projected this world. If I come to the Lakshyartha, I can say that because the Lakshyartha is Brahman, and I am Brahman, I can say that I myself, with my Maya Shakti, have projected this world. Mayeva sakalam jatam, mayi sarvam pratishtitam, mayi sarvam layam yati, tat Brahma advayam aham. That non-dual Brahman, I am. So the parokshatvam of Brahma goes away, and the parichinnatvam, this limitation that was superimposed upon the Atma, also goes away. Why? Because being Brahman, I don't have the threefold limitations: space, time, or object. As Brahman, I have no space-wise limitation. I am all-pervading. As Brahman, I have no time-wise limitation. I am imperishable. I am immortal. And as Brahman, I have no object-wise limitation. Because wherever any object is, I am as the very existence of the object. So I am free of these threefold limitations. And therefore, there is no apurnatvam in me at all. Therefore, I am Purnaha. As Brahman, I am free of all these limitations and I am ever Purnaha. Therefore, there is no samsara in me at all. Therefore, there is no need to remove samsara also. In fact, I was never bound in order to be liberated. I don't even need moksha because as Brahman, moksha is my very nature. Therefore, I don't even need to attain moksha because moksha happens to be my very nature. I am nitya muktaha. I am ever liberated as this lakshyartha Brahman. So this is the Mahavakya Janya Jnanam. Therefore, Bhagavad Pada says Nirmalam. Nirmalam meaning that this Parichinnatvam also goes away. Aham Brahmeti means Parokshatvam of Brahma goes because Brahman I am. And Nirmala means Parichinnatvam of Atma goes. There is no impurity in me. There is no samsara in me. There is no limitation in me. This is the Mahavakya Janya Aikya Jnanam, the knowledge of oneness born out of study of the Mahavakya. So in the student's mind, there is only one Advaita, a Brahmatma that is there. One secondless Brahmatma that is left behind. Therefore, as Satyam Brahma, I am utterly unaffected by any mithya vastu. I am ever liberated. I am Purnaha. This is my nature. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om.